All right. So thank you everyone for joining my session and making the time for it. I really appreciate it. In this session, I'll be talking about how you can sort of run Drupal in the cloud for development, and I'll be mostly demoing it rather than sort of talking through the steps. I'll be mostly showing you how you can do it, what are the steps required, what are the technologies we'll be using in it. So moving on. So my name is Bassam Ismail. I work as a director of front-end services at Excellent. You can find me a skip note on the web, and both the slides and the code are available on the following links shared on the screen. I'll be also sharing these on Twitter later on. You can find my Twitter handle at the bottom right of the screen as well. Okay, so let's talk about why you would want to use why would you want to build and develop Drupal websites on the cloud, and why? What are the reasons that lead to it? So the first reason is limited resources. As a developer, you might be running a older laptop, say like a 8 gigs or a 4 gig laptop, and the project requires a lot of resources. You might be running, say, a lot of containers, a lot of services like Apache Solar, Elasticsearch, multiple databases. So that means running all of these on your laptop can be really difficult. It might make things slow, which affects your productivity. So that could be one of the reasons. Besides this, it could be that you are somebody who likes to use Windows, but for a certain reason, the project requires Linux. So uh, usually in those cases, you are required to change the operating system, which again is quite difficult. And the other reason could be that you want to onboard somebody else to the project, and onboarding somebody else requires a lot of effort. You have to help them with their laptop setup, help them understand what are the requirements. So these could be one of the few reasons why you would want to consider Drupal on the cloud instead of other options. But before we discuss like what are the benefits of the cloud, let's see like what would be the convention solutions that we would usually consider. So in normal circumstances, we would consider like procuring a new laptop in case your laptop is low on resources. But this means like you'll have to wait for deliveries. It's quite an expensive thing to do as well. So like a new laptop, a high-end laptop will cost you a lot of money. Uh, in case you are switching operating system, that means you have to take a backup of your whole machine. You have to learn a new operating system. So say a person using Windows needs to learn how Linux works, what are the various Linux CLI commands and all. And in case of onboarding someone quickly, right, and you want to improve that, you would end up delegating the work to somebody else. And delegating usually requires another person, which again means one more person being involved in this whole process. You're spending more resources there. So all in all, these some of these solutions may work out on a longer run, but on a shorter term, if you have limited time, limited resources, this certainly isn't the way to go. And this is where developing on the cloud comes in. So regarding the resources, right? So because on cloud, various cloud providers, like if you consider Amazon, AWS, or Google Cloud, or whatever else, they let you provision a new instance in a matter of minutes, if not seconds, and you get a wide array of options, right? So you can go from say like as low as like 512 MBs of RAM to several terabytes of RAM, and like very big CPUs as well. And when it comes to operating system, you get like a wide array of options there as well. So like all the common and widely used operating systems are available. Various older versions are available. So you have your own choices. You can easily switch between them. Um, and in terms of improving the onboarding, right? So this is something we'll take a look at during this session, but you can save a lot of time there as well by automating various aspects of onboarding. So with that, let's review what is actually required, right? So in case you want to start developing in the cloud, what is actually required? So you require access to a cloud compute provider. So this could be Amazon, this could be DigitalOcean, Google, Linode, whatever. In our case, we'll be looking into AWS. You need a browser, so where you can see the website that you're developing, where you can access the cloud provider. So a browser is very common. I don't think we can do anything without a browser. So a browser is required. I'll be using Google Chrome. and we require a ID or a code editor. So in our case, we'll be using VS Code. So I've already sort of documented this process a while back, the whole process of how you sort of create a new AWS instance, EC2 instance, how you configure it, how you provision it, how you install various softwares like say PHP, Composer, Node.js, Lando on this instance. However, I've done this all manually. So I sort of go to Ec2 Dashboard, I create a new instance, then I sort of SSH into the system and install the various applications. So this is a manual way to do it, and it's documented on this video. You can find it on the slides later on. However, this is not the way to go in case you want to sort of keep doing it very frequently. You want to keep updating your process time to time. This is not very reproducible, right? And it requires initially a lot of manual effort every time you want to spin up a new environment. So in this session, I'll be walking you through how you can automate it using various tools. So we'll be using two primary tools. We'll be using Terraform to sort of create an instance on AWS. And then we'll be using a configuration management tool called Ansible to provision, to configure this instance, right? So first we create this VM on EC2, and then we'll install various softwares that we require using Ansible on this instance. So that's pretty much it for the slides. Let's quickly review what the demo would look like, and I'll quickly jump in. So first we'll look at my AWS console, which would be pretty bare bones. Then we'll provision a new AWS EC2 instance using Terraform. Then we'll configure it using Ansible. Then we'll connect to the instance and see if everything is configured as expected. Then we will configure our IDE. After that is done, we will install Drupal. We'll see how the development works. And finally, we'll see how we can develop in the browser. So in case we don't have our laptops with us, so in case we have a iPad or a phone, in fact, we can still continue doing the development. So let me quickly jump in and let's start by reviewing my AWS console. So this is the AWS console. It might look different for different cloud providers, but usually they have a compute resource, and in AWS it's called EC2. The important thing to note first here is that it says Mumbai here, which also means AP South. This is the availability zone. So you would want to choose the closest one to you so that the server latency is the minimum, right? So Mumbai is closest to me, so I've chosen AP South 1. Now, if I go to the EC2 dashboard, let me open that up. And you can see I have 0 instances running currently, which means there's no VM in the cloud right now. So this is good. Now we can sort of start spinning up new instances and provision them. Okay, so I have already cloned the repository that I earlier showed in the slides. So it's here, and I'll sort of start going through the various steps that I've documented in the README file for this in this repository. So the first thing I want to do is I want to generate some SSH keys, right? So these SSH keys are important to make sure my instance is secure. Only with these SSH keys I'll be able to access it. Nobody else would be able to access it because passwords are disabled. So just the keys are required to access it. So I think I have already the keys directly. So let me remove it and generate it again. So I'll create this directory and use this command to generate my keys. So I'll run this, and within this directory, it's currently empty. I won't give any passphrases, and in a second you'll see there's a key file and there's a key.pub file. So this is your normal SSH keys. The key file would be uploaded on the instance, and the key would be the private file. This is something we'll keep on our local machines. We won't share it with anybody to make sure our instance is secure and nobody has access to it. Okay, so now that is done. What I'll do is the next step is to create a EC2 instance. Currently, like we saw, there's no instance. So what I'll do is I'll go into the Terraform directory. There's an instance directory in here. I'll walk through it in a bit. First, I'll run these commands. I'll run Terraform init, which basically tells to initialize a Terraform project in this working directory. So that is done, and then we'll start doing Terraform apply. So let's open this file. So there's just one file. These are just manifest files that are generated. So I'll say yes here, and it will start creating the instance. Okay, so now let's look at the Terraform file, what we are doing here, right, and how we are creating this instance. So the first thing I'm telling it that I'm creating infrastructure on AWS, and the region that I want to create this infrastructure is AP South 1, like I showed Mumbai. Then I'm telling it that create an AWS instance, which in this case means EC2 instance, right? And the AMI for it is this ID. AMI is basically a base image. So this basically translates to Ubuntu on AWS, right? So I'm telling it to use Ubuntu as a base image. And then there are a few additional parameters that I'm passing it. The most important one here is T2 large. This basically means what kind of configuration. So AWS has various naming conventions. So T2 large means 8 gigs of RAM, 4 CPUs. So this is a good machine, like a beefy machine. Obviously, like you can go like way beyond this as well, but this is a decent machine to run Drupal, like various kinds of Drupal websites on. And then we are passing the keys that we have generated, and we are also setting the volume or the storage of this instance to 20 GB. And then there are like various aspects of networking, but I do want to talk about the security group. So let's quickly look at the security group and how it plays a part in the security of our VM as well. So this has 2 ingress and 1 egress. So ingress basically means that what can access this VM, right? So we are just allowing port 22. So we can access the port through SSH, and we are also specifically allowing port 8080 over the TCP protocol, which means like if I go to the IP address :8080, I should be able to access that page in case that server is running. And egress basically means that the VM can access everything on the internet through any protocol. Besides that, we are creating we are setting up the networking for the VM, and this is something I won't go into. And finally, we have 2 sections, one called output IP and output instance ID. So this will sort of give us the VM's IP address that I can, public IP address that I can access it through, and the instance ID. So you can see like the instance ID is shared here, and there is a IP address here as well. So this is the IP address 1324.213 and 191. And let's go over here on the Ec2 dashboard and quickly check what it looks like. So it's already saying 1 instance is running. So if I check here, it says T2 large. So that seems right. And then the public IP address is 13.234.213.191, which looks similar to this one, right? So that means we have provisioned a new EC2 instance. So let's move forward. I'll be taking these 2 values and storing them as environment variables. So I'm running this command. So now I have VM IP and VM ID stored as environment variables that I'll be using later on. Let me run these following commands as well, and I'll talk about it in a second. So I'm just going back to the root of the project and then running 2 sed commands. So what sed does is basically it updates the inventory file and the AMI file using the values that I just now stored in the environment variables, and I'll be using them. So let's start by looking into the Ansible change that we made. So in the inventory file, it was it's sort of put in the IP address of the instance. So it now Ansible knows where to configure which server to configure, right? So which server to run various install various softwares on. So let me run this, and then I'll sort of talk through. I'll talk through what the package file or the playbook file actually does. So I've run these commands. The first command will sort of install all the requirements for Ansible, and the second command is basically running the playbook. So in the Ansible directory, we have a file called playbook. So this is a a simple file that what it does is it defines what needs to be configured on the VM. So we are telling it that install Docker. This is using a third-party package. We are telling it to set up a swap on the instance, and we are telling it to install Code Server, which is a application that lets us run VS Code in the browser. And we have some custom tasks. So these were the third-party tasks, and then we have a custom task here as well. So all this does is install Lando on the server, set the prompt or the shell to ZSH, and install a shell utility called Starship, which sort of makes my prompt a bit more nicer to look at. So I will let the playbook run. So this might take a few seconds. So let's quickly wait on that. Shouldn't take a lot of time, but yeah. So this is installing Docker. Then it will sort of run all these other commands as noted here in the playbook. So Docker, swap, Code Server, and then the other tasks. Okay, so while this is running, okay. So I'll just quickly wait for this to complete. Okay, so while this runs, right? So we already have our SSH details, right? So we already got the VM IP. So we know this is the VM IP. So let me copy this, and let's meanwhile configure our code editor, which is something we'll use to access the file, edit the files. So you need to start with, like, you need the remote SSH plugin in your VS Code. So that is something I've already installed, but this is the plugin. So once you install this remote SSH, you should see an icon like this in the sidebar. It's called Remote Explorer. So if I click over here, it should show SSH targets. Currently, I don't have any, which is fine. So what I'll do is I click on this plus icon, and I'll type in the details. So I'll type in SSH Ubuntu, because I'm using the Ubuntu machine, and the IP address. So it will ask me like where to store this configuration. I'll say like in the home directory. So it says it's added. So I'll open the configuration file. So this is the IP address, and you can see it's showing up here. I'll rename this to say AWS Drupal, which is a bit easier to understand and remember. And then under here, what I want to do is it's missing the key file, which will allow me to access this server, right? So I want to pass it a identity file, which is the private SSH key. So it requires an absolute path, so it doesn't confuse. And in case it's the directory is open from somewhere else, it doesn't sort of create problems. So I'll pass it the absolute path. So this would be the path to the repository, and then within that keys / key, because under keys we have the key file, right? So this should be fine. And if I look over here, I should see this. So let me right click and click on connect to host in the new window, right? So let's see. So it's currently connecting. You can see it's connecting here, and yeah, it's connected. The terminal should be open, and it's open here. So as you can see, it says Ubuntu, the IP address, and so on. So we are able to access the server. We are SSH'd into the server. Although you can see like the script is still running, and right now it's done. So just now it was done configuring it. So let me close the terminal, because you can see like if I do a echo shell, you see it's saying bash, because the playbook at that moment wasn't complete, and ZSH wasn't set as my shell. But let me close the terminal, open it again. So it's still showing me that. So let me try log out, or I think I'll need to connect again. So I'll close the remote connection, and I'll try to connect again. So I'll say connect in the current window. Yeah, it's connecting now, and let's look at the terminal. Hopefully, okay, it's still not updated. So let me see. The shell still seems bash, but let's see like if we have lando. Yeah, we have lando. So let's not worry about the shell right now. So we have Lando up and running. Now we need a few additional extensions, but before that, let me run a few commands in the background, because this is something that will take some time, and I don't want to lose that time immediately. So all I'll do is I'll just go to the Terraform AMI directory. I'll run the following commands. So what this does is it takes the current instance that we have provisioned, right? So first we created a new EC2 instance using Terraform, then using Ansible, we configured it, installed all the applications within it. But it took some time, right? So it took around like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. What we want to do is we want to store what we did so far into an AMI image. So like as a ISO image that we can later provision. So all these efforts that we sort of used up till now can be stored in an image, and next time we want to provision a similar instance, it could be done in a matter of seconds. So with these steps, I'll be creating an image. So it does take some time. So I'll let it do that. Meanwhile, let's come over here. Yeah, let's come over here and set up Drupal on this newly provisioned system. Right. So currently you can see like it says like SSH AWS, which means I'm already logged into the machine. So let's go over here. I will clone Drupal from the Drupal repository on GitLab. So I'll just take a clone from here rather than using Composer create project. So I'll do git clone. I'll set a depth of 1 so that it's quicker. So as you can see, it's cloning now. Should be done in a matter of few seconds. Yeah. So in the root of the project, okay. Just 1 second. I think like because it's creating this image, so I think like this server might be disconnected. Let me check. Okay, let me try connecting again. Hopefully it should work. Okay. Okay, it seems like it will take some time because it's creating a new instance, so it seems to have deleted the older one. We'll just give it a few. I think like it will take a minute and then we can resume. Yeah, so it's the AMI is sort of replaced the current instance ID, and sort of it's creating a new AMI from it. Just a second, let me see if the instance is still working. So this should actually be fine. It should be working. I'm not sure why it's down. Okay, it says like the server should be on. So let's try once more. Do it in a new window. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure what happened there. But yeah, you can see like the terminal is fine as well. We did a clone of Drupal. So Drupal is showing up here. What I'll do is I'll do like a open folder. I'll choose Drupal here. This is on the server, by the way. So you can see I have the Drupal site running, but it's running on the AWS machine. So let me save some time and quickly set up Lando here because we have already installed Lando. So I'll do Lando init. I choose the current directory because this is not a composer project. So the index file is right there. So it would be in the current directory, and then I'll choose Drupal 9. We'll call it Drupal. And then I'll do lando start. So what this will do is it will pull all the relevant Docker images that are required. So this is pulling those images. Meanwhile, what I want to do is, like, because I will be working on Drupal, so I'll need a few additional modules installed. So I already had them on my machine, but because some modules require to be there to be on the VM, so we'll have to install it. So we'll need Drupal syntax highlighting. So I'll install it. So it says like install in SSH. And I also need Xdebug. So I'll install that as well. So both of these are installing now. I think like both of these are installed. So meanwhile, this is pulling all those images. I think like one of the images has been pulled. It's setting up the application server. And after this, it will set up the database server. Meanwhile, let's quickly create a module that we will later on use for testing Xdebug. So let's call it SWC and there would be a info.yaml file. This is our module. Name would be SWC. Type would be module. Core would be 8.x. Core requirement would be 8. 8 or 9. So this is our info file. By the way, like you can see, like the server is like the server has started. You see, like the app server has following URLs, right? So there are 2 HTTP localhost URLs, and then there are like 2 lando site URLs. What we are interested is in the localhost URL, and especially the HTTP one. So not the HTTPS one. So you can see like it has like ports exposed here, and automatically in the ports tab here, you can see that these 2 ports are forwarded by lando, and we'll see in a second what this means. So, but before I do that, I'll do like composer install so that we can have the site running. I prefix all the commands with lando because composer is there in the lando containers, and that sort of saves me a headache of managing these dependencies per project. So this will install all the dependencies. And I also want to install Drush so that I can run various commands to clear cache or install the site. So I'll do like composer required Drush. So this is also installed. Let's now install the site. So I'll do like a Drush CI site install. Because this is lando and Drupal 9, so everything will be like, in most cases it will be Drupal 9. So the database would be Drupal 9. Driver will still be MySQL. Username would be Drupal 9 here. The password would be Drupal 9. And host would be database because this is a Docker network. And port would be fine, the same thing. And I'll say yes. So this will install the site. In a second, the site should be installed. Yeah, it's installed. I'll copy over the username. So I've copied the username, and earlier we saw that like lando spit out to like 2 localhost URLs, right? And we said like we are interested in the HTTP URL. So let's see how that makes sense. So we are interested in this localhost 49159 because this is a HTTP one. If I command click on it, you see it has changed to 5500, right? So it is changed because it sort of remapped that to 5500. This will only work with my VS Code. It wouldn't work for anybody else. So if you want to, like an external user wants to access this, they won't be able to access this. So that keeps the instance very secure. So now let's look at, I'll quickly log in. So everything is working fine. Let me enable the module that we created. So the SWC module should be showing up here. So let's see SWC. Yeah, it's here. I'll install it. Oh, okay. It's not compatible. Maybe I got something wrong here. Just a second. So let me see if I wrote the core requirement part correctly. Maybe I missed something here. It's core version requirement. So let me paste this over. Let's refresh the page and let's install the module. Yeah. So the module is installed, but we don't have a file to trigger xdebug. So what I'll do is I'll create a module file. We'll just write a simple function, a preprocess function. So swc preprocess HTML. This should be good enough. However, we need to configure. We still need to configure xdebug for our text editor. So, like I showed earlier, that I've already installed xdebug. So PHP debug is already installed on the VM. So I'll go to the debug panel. I'll say run and debug. Currently, it's missing the configuration file. So I'll click on this cog. I'll choose PHP. And because Lando uses the latest version of xdebug, I'll change the port to 9003 and set up path mapping, because this is running inside, even though it's running in the VM, it's running inside a Lando container within the VM. So I'll say like in the Lando container, it's running at the path of /app, and the path on the VM is workspace folder, which it automatically figures out what the path is. So with this, the xdebug part is also configured. By default, it sort of listens. We want to listen just here. So I'll just keep this one breakpoint, but maybe let me add it again. So I want to listen at this point. I'll click on play, and I'll go back to the home page. So it didn't trigger. So let me just do a Lando CR first. Address CR, and then we'll refresh the page. Okay, so the reason why this isn't working is because if I go into the project root, within the Lando file, we haven't said that we want xdebug. So I do want xdebug. So let me run xdebug true. And for that, I require Lando rebuild. And here is a caveat that we'll discover in a second. So this will rebuild the container. Meanwhile, let me quickly check if the previous command that I was running is complete. So while this does it, yeah, so this one is already complete, and I will grab these following commands, or other just these commands. So yeah, so again, it shared some output. So it shared the app server URL. So you see like 49171 is here. Earlier, there were different values, right? So these values are redundant now. So we have to be cautious that like these ports keep changing. Lando doesn't bind them to a static value, or rather a static port. So I'll open the new port. I'll click here, and you see that immediately the breakpoint is triggered, right? So I can go over here. I can debug the variables. I can sort of watch the call stack. I can add more breakpoints and so on. So with this, you can see like the development, a lot of similar development that happens on your local. At times, this can be complicated, but with Lando running within the VM, it's quite simple to configure. It's quite simple to use. So I think like with that, I think we can wrap up the code editor part. Now, we earlier, like when I was demonstrating the project, when we were sort of configuring the instance, I talked about the security groups, and we were exposing, besides SSH, we were exposing the code server, right? So on port 8080. So our instance, like if I go back to our instance, so this is our public IP address. If I open it, this will by default open the port 80. So you can see like it's not opening anything here. It will keep sort of loading, and it will eventually fail. But if I go to port 8080, which is not running, just a second, let me check if I have the right thing. Yeah, port 8080 should be fine. It seems to be down for some reason. Okay, let me quickly SSH into the server and check. So to SSH, I'll just run this command. So this will SSH using the keys. The username is Ubuntu, and the VM IP basically is the environment variable that stores the instance IP address. And if I do a curl of local host 8080, you should see something. Okay, yeah, it's working here. So that should have been fine. I'm not sure what is the issue, but let me echo the VM IP, do port 8080 slash. Okay, yeah, it might be redirecting to HTTPS, so that might be the problem. So this is the code server. It's asking for the password. The password is, if you go under Ansible, under variables, I've set the code server password to Bassam Ismail. I'll copy this, paste it in here. And once this loads, so let's, yeah, you can see we have VS Code running here in the browser. If I go to the files directory, I'll choose open directory and I'll select Drupal here, right? I'll say okay. So under this, we have modules, we have the SWC, and we have the module file. So you can see like it's the same file we can configure here. There are obviously some limitations. So the major limitation is that like a lot of extensions are currently not available. So code server is currently in active development. So eventually they'll have all of this. So they mentioned that like they're working on remote SSH parts and adding support to other extensions. So yeah, so this is code server. You can open it in iPad, iPhone, wherever you want. Just open this URL or the URL for your instance, and that should be it. So I think like we are mostly done. The final piece is the AMI images. So earlier we ran this command in the terminal. So in the README, we had a section that sort of creates AMI image, which is basically an operating system image from what we had earlier provisioned, right? So what I did was in Terraform, I created an image, and then instead of using Ubuntu that I had pointed out earlier, we are replacing it with the instance, a new AMI image, right? So if I now basically create a new instance, so I'll do like cd Terraform instance, I'll do Terraform apply, but this time the AMI would have changed. So we are basically creating a new EC2 instance, deleting the older one and creating a new one. So usually this would mean that I would need to run Ansible. I will need to configure everything from scratch again. But because a new image was created, it should have a lot of things already pre-baked. So it will destroy the older instance and create a new one from scratch. So the destroying part takes a few seconds, and then it will spin up a new one. And let's meanwhile look at the EC2 instance here. On the dashboard, you can see like it's currently shutting down, then it would be terminating. So it's still shutting down. Yeah, it's terminated now. So after this, now it will sort of spin up a new one. Yeah, so in a second, yeah, you can see like there's a new instance now. So the instance ID would be different. The IP address would be different. So what this means is we'll also have to update our remote SSH here because the IP address has changed because the instance is different. You can keep it similar if you have an elastic IP, but I haven't sort of gone into those details. So if I try to connect to this one, so I'll say like current in a new window, it will fail. So it will keep resolving and eventually it will fail. So I won't wait here. So I'll quickly replace this IP address here with this one. I'll save this and then I'll try to connect again. Okay, I think like it's still provisioning. Let's see. Yes. Okay, I think it's connecting now. So I'm connected in the terminal. I can see I can see like ZSH is already configured. So if I do like echo shell, ZSH is already configured. And if I run lando, it's already configured. So I was able to provision a new instance with all these things running in 1 minute 20 seconds. It is usually a bit faster than this because I'm not sure like why it took a bit longer, but yeah, usually it's slightly more faster. So with this, I think like we were able to cover all these demo items. I know like there was a bit of a snack, but we were able to cover all these items. So yeah, that was all I had to present today. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions right away, or in case you have any questions later on, you can direct them towards me on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the session. Do we have any question in the audience?
Sure. I'm wondering if you can clarify why you're running Lando using Docker containers on a VM environment.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. It would be like less resource intensive, like if we didn't run Docker within a VM. But the reason for doing that is if you are working as a developer who's working on multiple projects, maintaining say like different versions of PHP, different versions of Apache, and so on, it gets difficult and it's not consistent among the team that you're working with. So at Accelerant, we use Lando for every project. That means if you want to configure something else, you'll have to go through various hoops, and also it's best to just use Lando, just do a Lando start, and you'll have a similar environment running as your peers. So that's one of the reasons.
So you have
obviously like if it's
you have multiple developers working on this VM that each have their own, that each spin up their own Lando environments?
No, so a single developer might be working on multiple projects. So ideally, we will spin up a single VM per developer. We won't let multiple developer use the same VM because that wouldn't usually work out for the best.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
As an end user of this, I wanted to confirm, my understanding is that if I am kind of more a front-end developer and I don't want to set my local environment, this setup will allow me to work in the browser pretty much all the time.
Yes. In the browser, or you just need VS Code on your machine, that's it. So we also use it like we onboard trainees or interns. And with them, like it's difficult because they have Windows laptops or older laptops that aren't really performant. So for them, we will just spin up a new VM, give them the access, and they are able to sort of work similar, like in a similar environment, like they are like other team members at Accelerant.
Sounds like a dream to me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This was really helpful.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.